Hi, I'm Oliver and this is Deep Cuts, a channel dedicated to music for lovers of music. So a lot of you have been asking for this video over and over, and I did promise it. I just never really got around to properly putting my thoughts to paper. So I finally have, so I'm going to do the Yeezy season 2018 review. Not that I'm probably telling you anything you don't know at this point, because if you're interested in music, you've heard of Kanye West, you know what Kanye West's been up to. Okay, but between May and June of 2018, in a whirlwind of newfound focus and energy, Kanye produced 5 new projects. In a sequencing twist, all of these releases bar one, which irritates me, has 7 tracks. And we can only really speculate as to exactly why Kanye's wanted to do this. However, Pusha T did do an interview on his Beats One show, and he had this to say: "Man, if we can't kill you in 7 songs, we don't really need to be doing the music." As far as the 7-track thing goes, I like it as a format. It's a refreshing take to have brevity as the focus of a hip-hop project, unlike some of those bloated epics that we're getting from people like Drake, Race Remord. You know, give me breezier records to listen to. I'd rather listen to a 7-track record that has something interesting about it than have to listen to an hour-and-a-half project where everything sounds the same. And that doesn't mean that every single project in this 5-project cycle is an unmitigated success, because it isn't at all, and that is not what I'm saying, and we will get into that in a minute. There's a real mixture of opinion on these projects, and I do want to know what people think of them, so let me know in the comments section below. I'm just going to breeze through my thoughts on these in release order. So we've got Pusha T, Kanye West, K.T.S.E Ghosts, Nas, and Teyana Taylor. Pusha T, Daytona. My favourite of all these projects by quite a large margin. Pusha T follows up Darkest Before the Dawn with a very focused, immediate piece of work. I don't think Pusha has ever been particularly consistent. I think the best thing he's ever done is My Name Is My Name from 2013, and the highlights of that record are particularly high, and the lows are really quite forgettable. I think Pusha needs direction when it comes to production, and that is what Daytona offers. The 7 tracks here all feel measured, thoughtful, tightly constructed, and memorable, most importantly. In terms of production, it's the best thing Kanye has done in a long time. Each of these 7 tracks take a very small handful of solid production elements and gives them room to breathe. There's no feeling that Kanye is shoving as much into the production as he possibly can, which is the way I felt about some of the tracks on The Life of Pablo, a project which ended up being a bit of a bloated mess because of it. You know, instead he opts for sparing soul samples and tight percussive sequences. And the thing is, this production finally does justice to Pusha's dark drug narratives. If You Know You Know has such confidence in its star, in its central focal point, which is Pusha T, and his first few bars are given room to breathe with only 8th note hi-hat hits, the occasional metallic clink, and that spliced vocal sample. That says to me this record is about this person and this person's voice. The music is there to accentuate this, but to Kanye's overwhelming credit, that is what he achieves in doing as the producer of Daytona. On the Games We Play, the languorous guitar and horns sampled from Booker T. Averhart's Heart and Soul track perfectly accentuates Pusha's lyricism, and he's doing what he does best here. It's braggadocio about his talent as an artist and his old drug-dealing days. There's no denying that Push only ever really talks about these subjects. He's a specialist in that very specific area, and that does risk his music getting quite stale. But that's another success in the economy of Daytona. This record's only 21 minutes long, so if you're only going to talk about one topic across 7 tracks, that actually works very well. Hard Piano and Santeria's use of piano and guitar samples respectively keep that production really fresh, and Push's delivery on these tracks make it sound like he's more invigorated about his music than he ever has been. On What Would Meek Do, which continues that dull Meek Mill beef, Kanye turns up, and to be honest, I could do without it. It's not a particularly good verse, and I've really enjoyed the sustained focus on Push throughout this record. You know, I just didn't really want Kanye shoehorned in there. You know, give back the booth. Regardless of my other caveat, which is the needlessly controversial cover art depicting Whitney Houston's bathroom after a drug binge, which Kanye reportedly paid 85 grand to have. Whatever, that's regardless of the music. I think this is a proper, solid release. I think it shows Pusha as a master stylist doing what he does best, and he is great on this record. And I think it shows Kanye in a brilliant light as a producer. It shows he is capable of still flexing his muscles and creating engaging tracks that have an economy to them. Cracking piece of work. Daytona is a great project. Kanye West, yay. So on to Kanye's own project now. Follow up to The Life of Pablo, yay. An ephemeral piece of work, down to that cover art which was created by Kanye on the way to the listening party for the record in Wyoming. And that's a good example of what this album is. It's a messy stream of consciousness, probably the most personal piece of work Kanye's ever done. And that doesn't make this one of his better albums, because streams of consciousness don't necessarily translate into high quality pieces of work, even if they are more personal. This is an engaging, if frustrating, listen in its inconsistencies, its successes, but also its failures. It really is one of those instances where you can't really separate the art from the artist, because it's all part of one persona. And we all know what Kanye did on the lead up to these 5 records. He was invigorated online. He started wearing the Donald Trump MAGA hat. He mentioned that he thought that slavery was a choice. Quite questionable decisions, which are probably going to impact the experience of listening to an artist who does talk about himself more often than not. His act before you think approach is infuriating, but in some way it's also refreshing in a perverse way, because he cuts through that media sheen, those personalities that have been constructed through PR companies. He says what he thinks, and he doesn't care who he offends, and much of that translates to the kind of music he makes, because he makes the kind of music he wants to make. Ye is the opposite of Daytona. It's unfocused, it's a hodgepodge of ideas, some which soar and others that sink. The opening track, I Thought About Killing You, is a really solid start. You have these choir samples that sound like warm synth pads underneath a spoken word Kanye performance who talks about his mental state and thoughts of suicide. It's one of the most compelling individual Kanye West tracks in years, because it's unflinching in its honesty. This is one of the moments that really soars on this record. The use of pitch shifting the vocals as well, I think, is a genius touch, because it references his admittal to struggling with bipolar disorder. We get a beat switch up towards the end of the track, which further darkens the tone, and it is a great musical moment. I'm sitting here thinking, this is brilliant. From here on though, it's a lot more mixed. A track like Yikes, which just feels completely throwaway, especially compared to the comparative bravery of the first track. And then All Mine feels similar too. And on a record that only has 7 tracks, why is every track not as well constructed as that opening track? The warm soul of Wouldn't Leave is a highlight. You have the resonant piano chords and Justin Vernon's heartstring tugging auto-tune, which we all know so well. It builds a nice platform for Ye to talk about his marriage with Kim Kardashian and whether his antics have potentially affected their union. It's another personal moment. Funnily enough, the most personal moments on this record are the ones that pull back and allow Kanye to talk about quite intensely personal things. I really like the musical palette that's teased throughout this record. You have the choir vocals, the pads, the synths. They are so well paired with that quite intimate lyricism from Kanye, but I think other than the first track, they are underutilized. I think there's some great ideas here, but in the end, because Kanye wants to throw out these projects as quickly as possible, he doesn't want to refine them, the album comes off as a messy, cluttered mix of ideas. Of all the records, it feels as if this record could have had much more time taken on it. It could have been lengthened. These ideas could have been really built upon. It could have been another Kanye masterpiece. But unfortunately, in its form as it is, it's an engaging but very frustrating listening experience. K.T.S.E Ghosts. K.T.S.E Ghosts is a collaborative record between Kid Cudi and Kanye West, and it's a patchwork quilt of ideas that, at their core, are all very good. But I've probably already betrayed my opinion of this record by using the term patchwork, because it's made with lavish material which is poorly cut and stitched together. Funnily enough, it's probably best summed up during that Shirley Ann Lee sample at the end of Fourth Dimension. Just do that and then let the music do something, then do that again. That'd be enough for a record, I mean. You only want 2.5 minutes if you can get it, 3 minutes max. Yes, this sample taps into the 7-track concept that goes throughout these records, but unlike Daytona, where it was advantageous and it benefited Pusha's narrative and flows and the production was tight, K.T.S.E Ghost just feels like a load of tracks littered with ideas and none of them particularly capitalised on. A bit like Ye. Tellingly, my favourite track is the opening track, a bit like Ye again. The track's called Feel the Love and it contains a great guest verse from Pusha. And I'm thinking, yes, more Daytona, let's do it. Perhaps there's something in this. As with Ye, the opening track, to me, is the strongest track on the record. Maybe Kanye made up these first 2 tracks, saw projects coming out of both of them, and then just rushed the subsequent 6 tracks on each project to try and create a project he could put out. I don't know, for me it feels like there's quite a lot of work and love gone into those 2 opening tracks, and then the subsequent tracks feel much more mixed. I don't know, that's just a bit of piebald speculation that probably doesn't mean a great deal. It's just interesting that my favourite tracks on both of these records happen to be the opening tracks, and to me they both seem to be the tracks that have had the most care and attention put into them. Fire barely gets going before it ends, and that's a real detriment to this project because it's following such a solid opener. So if you follow a solid opener with a track that basically just begins and ends like that, it already makes the project feel messy and fractured and unrefined. Just ride a good idea. If you have a good idea, and Fire, it's an alright track, I guess, if it was longer, but it's just an idea and then it ends. And it just feels like you need to ride these ideas. If you've got a solid hook and an idea, go with it. Free is a banger, an apparent sequel to Ghost Town off of Ye, and Kanye and Kid Cudi's vocals provide a really satisfying call and response on this track over a very driving percussion sample and that overdriven guitar sound. What I do like about the record is that it feels like an equal collaboration between two artists. It doesn't feel like a Kanye record with Kid Cudi featuring. It does actually feel like a joint effort. I think you can hear stylistic influences and ideas from both of these artists. This comes across most on the Kurt Cobain sampled Cudi montage. It's a moment where both artists are equally spotlit, talking about the pressures of violence and making a poignant joint plea to their God. God, Lord, shine your light on me, save me, please. So here's the thing, if these moments have a twinkling potential, why not take longer with these ideas and develop them and see what comes of them? Because like Ye, this is a frustrating experience. I think I prefer Ye as a project, not by much, but I think that the intimacy that Kanye shows with his lyricism is one of the most interesting things out of all 5 of these records, but again, underutilized. And with K.T.S.E Ghost, there's just so many underutilized ideas here. It's a fractured mess. And I just think, why? Take some time. It's not going to hurt. I'd rather wait longer for a project. But I know this isn't Kanye's MO at the moment. He wants to throw these projects out. He's itching to get them out. And then this is what we end up with. And I think really K.T.S.E Ghost is a pretty weak project in the end. Nasir. Here comes the worst project in this cycle, rather confusingly, from the artist who defined East Coast hip-hop in the 90s with a masterpiece like Illmatic. Deciding that his first project since 2012 should be produced by Kanye was Nas's first mistake, because his style just doesn't suit Ye's current mercurial music-making process. It just doesn't. Nas is best when he's telling the kind of stories that cemented Illmatic as such an important piece of work. It's the struggles of African Americans in America, police brutality, the kind of topics that make you feel uncomfortable because you realise we live in a world where these things still happen. Nas is so good at spotlighting that. He always has been. It isn't to say that Nas doesn't do this on Nasir, because it is still his focus as ever before. It's just unfortunately the production doesn't suit these narratives, I don't think. It doesn't suit him as an artist, it doesn't suit his artistic imprint, his lyricism. There is just a complete disconnect here between these two different ideas. To be honest, for me, this might come across a little bit harsh, but I feel as if Kanye is trying to shoehorn a certain type of style onto Nas's work, rather than thinking about how Nas's narratives work in the context of his own music and fitting production styles around that. It feels like he's gone, here are 7 tracks, do your thing over them. And that's a real shame. As far as production goes in this cycle, we've gone from the delights of Daytona to the unfocused messes of K.T.S.E Ghosts and Ye, and then this, just a complete misfire. It feels as if on some level Kanye has attempted to capture a languid aesthetic through these 7 tracks to reflect the brooding, weighty subject matter of Nas's lyrics. But where he's tried to make it broody and weighty, it comes across as lazy. It's just not very engaging. Take the track Everything, featuring The Dream. It's 7 minutes long, detailing Kanye and Nas wanting to shift the power of the world to African Americans, and apparently their power and their wealth is the way to do this. A topic which is interesting to explore, but the mock epic production of this kind of modern ballad sound and the crooning of The Dream make it sound trite and awkward. It's one of the most mismatched tracks between lyricism and production that I've heard in quite some time. You know, Kanye usually has a really good ear for establishing moods on tracks, and this track is just bleh. There's something satisfying about the unrelenting nature of the production on a track like Cops Shot the Kid, because you have an aggression bubbling under Nas with that repeated the Cops Shot the Kid motif and then these offset snare hits. It's a strong moment in a 7-track record that is almost entirely forgettable. Nas can do better, and Ye can certainly do better. Teyana Taylor, keep the same energy. Last one, swear to God, Ye, if you make any more records soon, well, I don't want to have to make another video just about your projects, you massive narcissist. After being really unimpressed by Nasir and fairly mixed on K.T.S.E Ghosts and Ye, I didn't have a great deal of hype left in me for this Teyana Taylor record. But, surprisingly, it ended up being my second favourite project of this entire 5-album cycle. An artist with a wonderful vocal presence. Teyana Taylor's voice is like warm, buttery soul that melts across her music. It is therefore integral that the pairing is right. And unlike Nasir, it feels as if Kanye has taken on board the artistic features of the person he's working with, and he's worked the production around that, rather than forcing in his own stylistic ideals into an ill-fitting framework. The opening track, No Manners, establishes the mood with dramatic strings, resonant piano. It really sort of brings you into the mood of this record, that it feels as if it's going to be more low-key than the other projects that I've been talking about. And at just under 2 minutes, it's a very short introduction to an already very short record, which is only 22 minutes long in total. On a track like Issues Hold On, Teyana and Kanye construct a gorgeous Sunday morning lazy soul vibe. You have the clean guitar tone, you have the brushed drums, rim taps. It's a wonderful moment, and it allows Teyana to stay front and center with her vocal presence, and with this talent she deserves to be. But Kanye does something very similar to what he did on Daytona. He keeps his artist at the focus of the record, and again, it's to the success of this work that he does that. Gonna Love Me works in a similar way, and I couldn't help listen to this track without thinking of Khalila's Take Me Apart, a brilliant record from last year which has much more of a modernist bite to it. I mean, Teyana Taylor's record here, K.T.S.E, doesn't really do much cutting edge, I don't think, like what I felt Khalila was doing on Take Me Apart. I mean, there's not really much time to do anything cutting edge, is it? It's such a short release. But what is done with this record is done really well. The sub-bass of Three-Way massages the ears as Teyana demonstrates her vocal talents, which are great. I want to hear her doing more projects. She has a really great voice. The strangest thing is final track WTP, or Work This Pussy. It's a hyper, four-to-the-floor dance track, which, although it's quite infectious, just doesn't belong on this record. It feels as if it's a moment where Kanye is really wanting to subvert expectations once again by creating an album full of low-key R&B soul ballad sort of tracks and then throwing this in the end. It just doesn't work. I don't know what's the point of chucking it in on the end there. And also, it ruined that 7-track sequence, you bastard. Regardless, it's a project that's relatively well executed. I really enjoyed Teyana's vocal performance on this record. I just hope next time she pairs up with a producer that can take her voice and push her talent to even greater heights, because I think there is definitely potential there. And that's my Yeezy Season 2018 review. Who knows, there might be a Yeezy Season 2019 review with the way that Kanye's been chucking projects out. Who knows, we'll be excited to see. I mean, has been a massive mixed bag for me, as I have just detailed, in a potentially quite rambling way, so I apologise for that if that's the case. I want to know what you all think of these albums, so please comment in the comment section so we can have a discussion about these records, about the 7-track sequencing, what you think of Kanye's approach in terms of production and performance throughout these records. Please join me on the Deep Cuts Discord on Tuesday at 10 o'clock BST. I think we're going to listen to Daytona and we're going to listen to K.T.S.E Ghosts or Ye, but we're going to do 2 of the records anyway, because obviously they're quite short. Thanks for watching. See you next week.